I thought being my girlfriend's plus one to her office gala would mean being introduced as her boyfriend, not her driver. Let me set the scene. My girlfriend Cassidy, 28, female, and I, 29, male, have been together for 3 years. When we met, she was a bright-eyed, ambitious junior executive at a PR firm. I work in tech, a stable but decidedly less glamorous field. I build secure data systems. She builds images for a living. For the first 2 years, it was great. We were a team. I supported her late nights, celebrated her wins, and she seemed to appreciate my steady, grounded nature as a balance to her chaotic world. Over the last year, though, something shifted. Her ambition curdled into a kind of frantic, image-obsessed social climbing. Every dinner had to be at an Instagrammable restaurant. Every outfit had to be curated. Our relationship started to feel less like a partnership and more like I was an accessory. She was still deciding whether or not matched her new handbag. This brings me to last Saturday. It was her company's annual gala, a massive event where all the big clients and corporate sharks gather. For weeks, it was all she could talk about. She needed to make an impression on her boss and a few key clients. I was happy to be her supportive boyfriend. I rented a tux, got a fresh haircut, and took the afternoon off to make sure she had a stress-free day getting ready. I drove us to the venue, a swanky downtown hotel, and she looked incredible. I was genuinely proud to be on her arm. The first hour was a blur of air kisses and champagne. I'm not a huge fan of these events, but I can hold my own. I mingled, made small talk, and tried to be the charming, unobtrusive plus one. At one point, I went to the bar to grab us fresh drinks. On my way back, I saw Cassidy chatting with a man I recognized from her work stories as her boss, a notoriously sleazy guy known for his wandering hands and high-profile client list. I slowed my approach, not wanting to interrupt. That's when I heard it. Her boss gestured toward me with his champagne flute and asked who I was. I saw Cassidy glance in my direction, a little smirk on her face. She leaned in conspiratorially and said something that made my blood run cold. She told him I was her driver. She even laughed, adding that it was part of the aesthetic. She said having a driver, a sleek dress, and tall heels completed the full fantasy. Her boss chuckled, gave me a dismissive once-over, and then put his hand on the small of her back. I just stood there holding 2 glasses of champagne, feeling like an idiot. I wanted to walk over and dump the drinks over both their heads, but I didn't. I just quietly retreated to a corner, downed both glasses myself, and spent the rest of the night avoiding her. When she finally found me, she was annoyed that I disappeared. In the car on the way home, I confronted her. She just rolled her eyes. She told me it was a joke, that it was for show, and that I shouldn't make it a big deal. She insisted her boss would have been intimidated if he knew I was her long-term boyfriend, and it was a strategic move to appear unattached and powerful. She said I was being too sensitive, and that I didn't understand the pressures of her world. I let it go, but the humiliation festered. The next day, she was on a brunch call with her friends, and I overheard her telling the story again, this time framing it as a hilarious anecdote. She was laughing about how I just didn't get it, and implied that my career wasn't on her level, so I couldn't possibly understand the nuances of corporate optics. That was it, the final straw. The casual, cruel dismissal in her voice broke something in me. I walked out of our apartment without a word and drove straight to the one person I thought might understand. Her younger sister, Bianca, 26, female. Bianca is the complete opposite of Cassidy. She's a vet tech, wears flannel shirts, and has dirt under her fingernails from helping animals. She's kind, down to earth, and has always been a quiet supporter of our relationship. Though I often caught a flicker of pity in her eyes when Cassidy would make one of her casually cutting remarks at my expense. I found Bianca in her small apartment, smelling of dog shampoo and coffee. I spilled everything, the gala, the driver comment, the phone call with her friends. I expected sympathy, maybe some sisterly excuses for Cassidy's behavior. What I got was pure, unfiltered rage on my behalf. Her face hardened, and she told me she was horrified, but not surprised. She admitted she'd always thought Cassidy didn't deserve me, and that she'd watched her sister morph from a fun-loving girl into this shallow caricature. Then she looked at me with this intense vulnerability and blurted out something that knocked the wind out of me. She said if I were hers, she would introduce me as the man she was proud to love, not hide me like some servant she'd hired for the night. She confessed that Cassidy used to bully her relentlessly in school for being the boring, mousy sister, always making her feel second best. In that moment, I saw a woman who had been living in her sister's shadow, just as I had been made to feel like I was living in Cassidy's. The air between us was electric. All the hurt and anger I felt toward Cassidy transformed into a powerful, magnetic pull toward Bianca. And then we kissed. It wasn't planned. It was just a raw, desperate collision of two people who finally felt seen. It didn't go any further than that, but the emotional line had been crossed, and there was no going back. I left Bianca's place feeling more confused than ever. A part of me feels like a monster for kissing my girlfriend's sister, but another, bigger part of me feels like I just took my first breath of fresh air after drowning for a year. Cassidy has no idea. She thinks I'm just pouting. She's been sending me texts asking when I'm done with my mood and coming home. I have a choice to make. I can go back to Cassidy, swallow my pride, and pretend none of this happened. Or, I can take this betrayal and use it as fuel to burn her perfectly curated world to the ground, with Bianca possibly holding the match. So Reddit, am I the bad guy if I choose chaos? Now I'm stuck between keeping the peace or burning the whole house of lies down. What should I do? T. My girlfriend of 3 years introduced me as her driver to her boss to look powerful. After she mocked me for being upset, I went to her sister for comfort, and we kissed. Now I'm contemplating ending my relationship in the most spectacular way possible. See Update 1. It's been a few days since my original post, and things have escalated. Cassidy found Bianca's earring in my car. After reading all your comments, the vast majority of which were a resounding chorus of, "Not the bad guy, burn it all down," I decided to take a few days for myself. I crashed on a friend's couch and told Cassidy I needed space to think. She acted like this was a massive inconvenience. A dramatic overreaction to a silly joke. Her lack of remorse was clarifying. The love I thought I had for her was shriveling up, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Yesterday, I went back to the apartment while she was at work to pack a bag with more of my things. I also decided to clean out my car, a task I find weirdly therapeutic. As I was vacuuming the passenger seat, I saw it. A tiny silver stud earring shaped like a paw print, nestled in the crevice. Bianca's. She's always wearing them. My heart hammered in my chest. I pocketed it, planning to return it to her later, and finished my packing. I should have known Cassidy had the surveillance instincts of a Cold War spy. I was walking out the door with my duffel bag when she came home early. She took one look at my bag, her eyes narrowing. She demanded to know what I was doing. I told her calmly that I was leaving, that I couldn't get over what she did and how she treated me afterward. That's when her eyes flicked down to my shirt pocket, where the earring was creating a tiny, telltale bump. Before I could react, she lunged forward and snatched it. She held it up to the light, her face contorting into a mask of theatrical fury. She didn't recognize it as Bianca's, not at first. She just saw it as proof of what she wanted to believe, that I was the bad guy. She started screaming. She accused me of cheating, of being a liar and a sneak. The irony was so thick I could have choked on it. Here was the woman who introduced me as her servant, to impress her boss, calling me a liar. I let her rant for a solid minute before I held up a hand. I told her very calmly that yes, the earring belonged to another woman. I told her it was Bianca's. I explained that I went to see her sister for emotional support, after she had humiliated me in front of her colleagues. I watched her process this information. For a second, I saw a flicker of something, maybe shame, but it vanished as quickly as it came, replaced by her default defense mechanism. Gaslighting, she scoffed. She said I was pathetic, running to her mousy little sister for a shoulder to cry on. She told me I was being too sensitive, that I wasn't ambitious enough to understand the sacrifices required in her world. She claimed I was trying to sabotage her career by being so needy. That's when I finally let the anger show. I looked her dead in the eye and said, "That's exactly what you told your boss about me, wasn't it? That I'm not on your level." The question hit her like a physical blow. Her face went pale, then flushed a deep, blotchy red. She had no comeback, no witty retort, no corporate doublespeak to hide behind. She just stood there exposed. and then she slapped me hard across the face. The sting was sharp, but what I felt most was a profound sense of finality. This was over. There was no coming back from this. I didn't yell. I didn't even raise my voice. I just looked at her, the woman I once loved, and felt nothing but pity. I turned around, picked up my bag, and walked out the door without another word, leaving her standing alone in the middle of our living room. I've been driving around for the last hour, not sure where to go. My cheek is still throbbing. My phone buzzed a minute ago. It was a text from a number I didn't recognize at first, but I knew it had to be Bianca. The message was short, but it landed like a grenade. I told her everything. Do I go back and face the fallout? Do I call Bianca and see what everything means? Or do I just keep driving and let the sisters implode on their own? Update 2: Cassidy's mom just called me a gold digger in reverse. Whatever that means. Apparently, in her eyes, I was supposed to be grateful for the opportunity to be associated with their family's good name. And by leaving, I was somehow robbing them of the charity they'd bestowed upon me. The logic is dizzying. It's been a week since the slap and the text from Bianca. The fallout was immediate and messy. Everything, as it turned out, meant everything. Bianca, fueled by a lifetime of simmering resentment, had called Cassidy moments after I left and confessed to the kiss. She told Cassidy that she was tired of watching her treat people like props in her personal movie. The ensuing fight, from what Bianca told me later, was apocalyptic. I kept my distance, letting the storm rage. Then 3 days ago, Bianca called me. She sounded exhausted but firm. She invited me to a family dinner at her parents' house that weekend. She said she was done hiding and wanted to clear the air once and for all. She promised her dad would be there to mediate. I was hesitant, but a part of me knew this was necessary. I agreed to go. I walked into that house on Saturday, expecting tension, but not an ambush. Bianca greeted me at the door with a small, nervous smile. Her dad, a quiet man I'd always liked, gave me a firm handshake and a look that said, "I'm on your side." Her mom, however, looked at me like I was something she'd scraped off her shoe. We were just sitting down in the living room when the front door opened again. In walked Cassidy, and she wasn't alone. She had her sleazy boss in tow, holding his arm like a trophy. She had brought him to her family dinner as her new date. The power play was so transparent it was pathetic. She was trying to flaunt her success, to show me, her family, and everyone else that she had already upgraded. The air crackled. Cassidy's mom immediately started fawning over the boss, while her dad looked like he'd just swallowed a hornet. The dinner was the most excruciating 2 hours of my life. Cassidy spent the entire time making passive-aggressive jabs, talking about her new promotion and how wonderful it was to be with someone who understands the drive for success. Finally, Bianca had had enough. She put her fork down and looked squarely at her sister. She said she couldn't believe the audacity of her bringing this man into their home after what she'd done. Cassidy, of course, fired back, accusing us of being the betrayers, the snakes who went behind her back. That's when Bianca detonated the bomb she'd been holding onto. With ice in her voice, she looked at her boss and then at her parents, and announced that the only reason Cassidy got her recent promotion was because she'd been sleeping with him for months to secure it. The silence that followed was deafening. The boss looked panicked. Cassidy's mom looked like she was about to faint. Her dad just stared at Cassidy with a look of profound disappointment. Cassidy started stammering, trying to deny it, but her face told the whole story. Amidst the chaos, I felt a strange sense of calm. I looked at Cassidy, whose perfect facade was crumbling before my eyes, and I felt nothing but a dull ache for the person she used to be. I spoke for the first time all night, my voice quiet but clear. I told her she spent so much time worrying that people would think she'd downgraded by calling me her driver, but she had it all wrong. I said, "I'm the one who upgraded, to someone who actually sees me." As a final nail in the coffin, I brought up my birthday from last year. I reminded her how she'd canceled the quiet dinner I'd wanted with friends because, in her words, a low-key celebration didn't fit her vibe for that month. It was a small, petty detail, but it highlighted the depth of her self-absorption. Cassidy burst into tears, called me a monster, and stormed out of the house, dragging her horrified boss behind her. Her mother shot me a look of pure venom before rushing after her. In the ensuing silence, Bianca's hand found mine under the table and squeezed. I looked across at her father. He wasn't looking at me. He was looking at our joined hands. And for the first time all night, he smiled. We're in the eye of the hurricane now. The family is fractured. Cassidy's career is built on a lie, and I'm holding hands with her sister. I helped expose her, and a part of me relished it. Am I the villain here? Update 3. It's been 3 months since the disastrous family dinner. The dust has settled, but the landscape has permanently changed. Cassidy's mom still refuses to speak to either of us. Her dad, on the other hand, has been quietly supportive. He started having weekly lunches with Bianca, rebuilding a relationship that Cassidy's ego had long overshadowed. As for me and Bianca, we took things slow. We spent weeks just talking, unpacking years of baggage, hers with her family, mine with her sister. We built a foundation on honesty and mutual respect. It was the easy, most natural thing in the world. Being with her feels like coming home. 2 weeks ago, on a rainy Sunday afternoon in her cozy apartment, surrounded by her rescue pets, I asked her to marry me. I didn't have a flashy ring or a grand gesture. I just had a heartfelt speech and the silver paw print earring that started it all, which I'd kept in my wallet. She cried. I cried. And the dog tried to lick the tears off our faces. It was perfect. We decided to keep it low-key for a while, sharing the news only with her dad and a few close friends. But secrets have a way of getting out in this family. Cassidy got wind of the engagement and, to put it mildly, she spiraled. She posted a multi-slide Instagram story rant full of veiled accusations and bitter commentary about people who build their happiness on the ruins of others. It was a masterclass in playing the victim. That's when Bianca and I decided that we were done being quiet. We were done letting Cassidy control the narrative. It was time for some petty, well-deserved chaos. Revenge, Part 1. The HR complaint. Bianca, it turns out, had saved some incriminating texts from a distraught Cassidy from months ago, where she'd bragged about the affair with her boss and how it was her ticket to the top. Using a secure email and a burner account, I drafted a very professional, very anonymous tip to her company's HR department, complete with dates, details, and tastefully redacted screenshots. We sent it and waited. A week later, we heard through the grapevine that her boss had been quietly demoted and transferred to a different department for unprofessional conduct. Cassidy kept her job, but she lost her status as the firm's golden girl, the charming client face. She was radioactive. Revenge Part 2, the engagement party. We decided to throw a party to celebrate our engagement. We booked a private room at a trendy downtown bar, the kind of place Cassidy loves to be seen at, and we scheduled it for the exact same night as her company's big fall networking gala, an event she was desperately hoping would help her recover from her recent fall from grace. We sent out digital invitations to all our friends, her dad, and a handful of her former work friends who had grown tired of her antics and had since gravitated toward Bianca. The final touch. We sent an invitation to Cassidy. She took the bait. On the night of the party, she showed up dressed to the nines, ready to cause a scene and publicly decry our betrayal. She stormed into the room, opened her mouth to start screaming, and stopped dead. The room was packed, not just with my friends and Bianca's, but with at least a dozen of her former colleagues and work friends, all of them laughing, drinking, and congratulating us. They had all chosen our party over her gala. The look on her face, a cocktail of shock, humiliation, and fury, is something I will treasure for the rest of my life. Bianca and I walked over to her. I smiled warmly and thanked her. I told her that if she hadn't shown me who she truly was, I never would have found my way to true happiness with a woman who valued me. I told her we owed it all to her. Then Bianca handed her the open bar tab, told the bartender this lady was covering the rest of the night, and we walked away, leaving her standing there, utterly defeated. She cornered me as I was leaving. Her voice was a low, vicious hiss. She said she'll ruin my wedding day. She promised a spectacle that would make this party look like a tea ceremony. Part of me thinks she's just bluffing, a wounded animal lashing out, but another part of me knows how vindictive she can be. Should I call her bluff or prepare for war? Update 4. The past 6 months of wedding planning have been a strange mix of blissful excitement and low-grade paranoia. Bianca and I were determined to have a beautiful day, but in the back of my mind, Cassidy's threat echoed. We hired extra security for the venue, a beautiful old barn in the countryside, and gave them photos of Cassidy and her sleazy ex-boss with strict instructions not to let them in. We thought we were prepared. We underestimated her sheer, unadulterated nerve. Somehow she and her date managed to slip in with a group of late-arriving guests just as the ceremony was about to begin. I was standing at the altar, my heart pounding with joy as I watched Bianca walk down the aisle, looking like an absolute dream. And then I saw her. Cassidy, standing at the back of the crowd, was wearing a slinky cream-colored dress that was practically white, with her disgraced former boss smirking beside her. My blood ran cold. This was it. The spectacle she promised. Just as the officiant began to speak, Cassidy's voice cut through the air. "I can't let you do this," she yelled, striding forward. "This whole marriage is a sham built on lies." A gasp went through the crowd. She pointed a dramatic finger at me and Bianca. "He cheated on me with my own sister. She's a homewrecker and he's a liar." But instead of the shocked and horrified reaction she was expecting, there was just silence. An awkward, pitying silence because everyone already knew. Everyone. You see, I decided not to call her bluff. I decided to prepare for war. At our rehearsal dinner the night before, surrounded by our closest family and friends, I took control of the narrative. I stood up and gave a toast. I talked about love, honesty, and how sometimes the most painful endings lead to the most beautiful beginnings. And then, with Bianca's blessing, I put on a short, simple slideshow. It had screenshots of Cassidy's texts. It had a brief, paraphrased summary of the driver incident. It laid out the entire story calmly and factually. I ended it by saying, "We refuse to let old wounds and false narratives poison our future. We are choosing to start our marriage with radical transparency." So when Cassidy made her grand, disruptive stand, she wasn't dropping a bombshell. She was just airing old, settled laundry. Bianca's dad, without a moment's hesitation, stood up and walked straight to her. His voice was low but carried across the silent barn. He told her, "This isn't your stage anymore, Cassidy. It's over." He and one of the security guards firmly escorted a sputtering Cassidy and her pathetic date out of the ceremony. The last thing I heard was her screeching about how we'd all regret this. But that wasn't my final move. That was just defense. The real revenge, the nuclear option, had been launched 72 hours earlier. I had a friend of a friend who is a master of viral content. I sent him the short audio clip I had secretly recorded of Cassidy telling her friends the driver story on that fateful brunch call. He packaged it with some context, anonymously of course, and posted it to a few major subreddits and TikTok. The post blew up. The clip was picked up by a massive feminist influencer who used it as a prime example of women perpetuating elitism and internalized misogyny, using patriarchal ideas of status to belittle others. By our wedding day, Drivergate was a full-blown meme. Cassidy became the face of entitled, shallow girlfriend behavior. Her name and face were everywhere. Her PR firm, already wary of her after the HR complaint, put her on indefinite leave. The sleazy ex-boss, now publicly linked to her and the scandal, dropped her immediately. Her mother, mortified beyond belief, finally cut her off completely. She didn't just ruin my day. She'd torched her entire life with a single arrogant phone call months ago. As the doors of the barn closed behind her, sealing her out of our lives for good, Bianca turned to me, a slow, beautiful smile spreading across her face. The rest of our wedding was perfect. It was full of love, laughter, and the profound relief of a battle won. We just got back from our honeymoon. I saw a comment on my last post that said, "The best revenge is living well." I agree, but I'd add a small amendment. Sometimes the best revenge isn't just moving on. It's showing up with a woman who would rather drive the getaway car with you than leave you behind for a fake fantasy. And my wife is one heck of a getaway driver.